Today, we're diving into one of the biggest, oldest questions out there: poverty. What really causes it, and how do we escape it? Is it about personal choices? Is it a flaw in the system? Or maybe it's something else entirely? We're going to look at three very different and honestly pretty radical answers to that question.
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to kick things off with a question from the historian Rutger Bregman. And just a heads up, it's a question that's designed to make us all feel a little bit uncomfortable and really check our own biases.
Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds incredibly harsh. But here's the thing. It's not just a mean-spirited opinion. It's actually based on data. Study after study shows that people living in poverty tend to have more debt, they save less, and often engage in habits that aren't great for them, like smoking more or exercising less. So the question is still there. Why?
For a very long time, this quote right here was pretty much the standard answer. The idea that poverty is basically a personal failure. You know, it's a result of lazy habits, a lack of willpower, maybe just a bad character. In this view, the blame falls completely on the individual. But what if that whole idea is just plain wrong?
So let's explore a totally different way of thinking about this. This one challenges that old view with a really fascinating scientific study that kind of flips the entire problem on its head.
So, picture this. A group of psychologists fly to India to run an experiment with sugarcane farmers. Now, these farmers have a really unique financial life. For most of the year, right before the big harvest, they're quite poor. But right after they sell their crops, for a little while, they're actually pretty well off. The researchers gave them cognitive tests during both of these periods, when they were poor and when they were rich.
And the results were, honestly, they were stunning. The very same farmers scored an average of 14 IQ points lower before the harvest when they were poor. Now, to put that number, 14 points, into perspective, that kind of cognitive drop is what you'd expect from losing a full night's sleep. It's even comparable to the effects of chronic alcoholism. It's a massive difference. And this discovery led to a whole new theory: the scarcity mentality. The idea is that poverty isn't a lack of character. It's that poverty itself taxes your brain. When you are constantly worrying about rent and food and bills, your mind just doesn't have room for anything else. It's like a computer that's running way too many programs at once. It just slows down, it starts to glitch, and it definitely can't focus on long-term goals.
And this quote just perfectly captures why so many well-intentioned anti-poverty programs, like financial education classes, just don't work. I mean, you can teach someone all the swimming techniques you want, but it's pretty much useless if they're already in the middle of a hurricane just trying to keep their head above water. Their mind is already overwhelmed.
So if the problem isn't a lack of skill or character, but literally a lack of cash that's causing all this mental strain, then maybe the simplest solution is the most obvious one: just give people money. And this brings us to the pretty radical idea of a universal basic income, or UBI for short. And you know, this isn't just some fantasy. Back in the 70s, a small town in Canada called Dauphin actually ran a huge experiment where every single family was guaranteed a basic income. No one could fall below the poverty line. But after 4 years, a new government came to power and just shut the whole thing down. They packed up all the data, like 2,000 boxes of it, and it was totally forgotten for decades, until a professor found it and decided to see what actually happened.
The results she uncovered were just incredible. Hospital visits dropped by 8.5%. More high school kids stayed in school and graduated. There was less domestic violence. And you know that old fear that people would just stop working? It didn't happen. The town just got healthier, smarter, and wealthier.
So what would this actually cost? Well, economists figure that a basic income program that would lift every single American out of poverty would run about $175 billion a year. Now look, that is a huge amount of money. But to put it into context, it's only about a quarter of what the US spends on its military every single year. Okay, so that's a really powerful case for a big systemic solution that's all about cash. But is that the whole story? Or do our own individual choices and our daily habits still play a huge part in all of this?
So let's pivot and look at a completely different perspective. This one is championed by a lot of self-made entrepreneurs, people like Alex Hormozy. And their argument is simple. While the system might matter, the number one thing that determines your financial success or failure is your own habits.
They often use this cool mental model called inversion thinking. The idea is, instead of trying to figure out the secret to getting rich, you flip it. You figure out all the things that guarantee people will be poor, and then you just don't do those things. You systematically cut them out of your life.
So, what are these traps? Well, the first category is all about your mindset. This view argues that poverty really starts with a feeling of powerlessness. It's the blame game, where nothing is ever your fault. That leads to just waiting around for someone else, maybe the government, to come and save you. And it's all held in place by caring more about what other people think than about your own goals.
Next up are the action traps, or maybe inaction traps. We all know the first one, procrastination. I'll get to it tomorrow. That's usually combined with seeking comfort, always choosing the easy path instead of the important, difficult work. And then the killer. You finally try something, you fail once, and you just give up for good thinking that one failure defines you forever.
And finally, we've got the money traps. From this point of view, it's not about how much you make, it's about what you do with it. Trap number 1, trying to look rich instead of actually being rich, buying flashy things instead of building assets. This is usually fueled by not even tracking where your money goes. And maybe the biggest trap of all is being fragile, relying on just one paycheck, which leaves you totally exposed if anything goes wrong.
So we have these two powerful but totally opposing ideas. It's the system versus the individual. But let's bring in a third perspective. This one is super practical, it's from Bill Gates, and it's aimed at people in the most extreme poverty on the planet, those living on just $1 or $2 a day.
And his answer is chickens. Seriously. Why chickens? Well, they're super easy and cheap to raise. They're an amazing investment. Just 5 hens can turn into a flock of 40 in only 3 months. That flock can bring in over $1,000 a year, which lifts a family way above the extreme poverty line. Plus, the eggs provide crucial nutrition for kids, and since women are often the ones who manage the chickens, it directly empowers them financially. It's simple, but brilliant.
So let's just pull back for a second and look at these 3 views side by side. You have the systemic view, which says the problem is a lack of cash, and the solution is UBI. You have the individual view, which says the problem is bad habits, and the solution is self-discipline. And then you have the practical view, which says the problem is a lack of opportunity, and the solution can be as simple as a small, smart investment.
We're going to end with that really powerful quote from Rutger Bregman that kind of started this whole conversation. Poverty isn't a lack of character, it's a lack of cash. So, is he right? Or is the truth somewhere in the middle, a mix of all 3 of these ideas? The real answer probably changes depending on who you are and where you are in the world. So the final question isn't really what's the answer to poverty, but maybe which answer do we need most right now?